Hi and welcome. I'm Midnight Truth, and it's so nice to have you here tonight, wherever you are right now. Whether you're in bed, lie on the couch, or just looking for a quiet moment, I want you to know this time is for you. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, feel the weight of the day start to fade. Let your mind settle, let your body relax, and let yourself simply be. There's no rush, no pressure, just this calm, quiet moment. If you like, you can close your eyes and imagine yourself in a peaceful place. Maybe it's a cozy room with soft, warm lighting. Or maybe it's under a starry sky, with a gentle breeze brushing against you. Wherever you feel safe and calm, let yourself drift there. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time is it there? Tonight's story is gentle and soothing, perfect to carry you into a deep, restful sleep. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. I pulled up the house just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky a dull orange. The moving truck rumbled behind me, its engine coughing like it was as tired as I was. My new place at the end of a quiet street, old, creaky, and bigger than I needed. 2 stories of weathered wood and chip paint stare back at me, the windows dark and empty. It wasn't much to look at, but it was cheap, and after the divorce, cheap was all I could afford. I grabbed a box from the truck, kitchen stuff, mostly, and hauled it up the sagging porch steps. The front door groaned as I pushed it open, and a faint, musty smell hit me, like damp earth and forgotten things. Inside, the air felt heavy, the kind of stillness that makes you hold your breath. The floorboards creaked under my sneakers, loud enough to make me wince. I flicked on the lights. The bulbs buzzed faintly, casting a yellowish glow over the living room. It'd do, I told myself. A fresh start. Unpacking took most of the night. I dragged boxes inside, set up the coffee maker, and tossed a sleeping bag on the floor since my bed was still in pieces. By midnight, I was sweaty and sore, but the basics were done. I flopped onto the sleeping bag, staring at the ceiling. A faint tapping came from somewhere. Probably pipes, I figured. Old houses like this always had quirks. I rolled over and closed my eyes. The next morning, I met Mrs. Carter. She lived next door, a tiny woman with gray hair pulled tight in a bun. I was hauling trash bags to the curb when she shuffled over, clutching a mug of tea. "You're the new tenant, then?" she asked, eyeing me up and down. "Yeah, just moved in last night." "I'm Matt," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. She nodded, glancing at the house. "It's been empty a while. Not many stay long." Her voice had an edge, like she was testing me. I laughed, trying to keep it light. "Well, I'm not picky. Just needed a place after life stuff." Her lips pressed thin. "Hope you're not the jumpy type. Last folks who lived there, young couple, they didn't last a month. Ran out one night, screaming about footsteps and shadows. Said the house was cursed." She paused, sipping her tea. Of course, people talk nonsense when they're scared. I raised an eyebrow. "Footsteps, huh? Guess I'll blame the creaky floors." She didn't smile. "Maybe. Just keep the lights on if you hear anything odd." Then she turned and shuffled back to her porch, leaving me standing there, trash bag in hand. I shook it off. Old neighbors love a good story, right? The house was old, probably 100 years, give or take. Creaks and groans were normal. I spent the day settling in, unpacking clothes, hooking up the Wi-Fi. My new job at the hardware store started Monday, and I wanted to feel normal before then. Routine was my lifeline after the past year. That night, I cooked spaghetti in the tiny kitchen. The stove hissed, and the pipes rattled when I turned on the sink. Nothing fancy, but it felt good to eat something I made. I sat on a folding chair, scrolling my phone when I heard a heavy thud from upstairs. I froze, fork halfway in my mouth. It came again, slow and deliberate, like someone dropping a boot on the floor. I set the fork down and listened. Silence. Then another thud, louder this time. My heart kicked up a notch. "Hello," I called, feeling dumb as soon as I did. No answer, just the hum of the fridge. I grabbed a flashlight from a box and climbed the stairs, each step groaning under me. The hallway was dark, the air cooler than downstairs. I flicked the light switch. Nothing happened. Bulb must be out. The thuds had come from the bedroom. I was pretty sure. I pushed the door open, shining the flashlight around. Empty, except for my disassembled bed frame leaning against the wall. The window was shut tight, no breeze. I stood there waiting, but the house stayed quiet. Maybe something fell, I told myself, or the place was settling. Old houses do that. Back downstairs, I finished my food, but the unease stuck with me. I kept glancing at the ceiling, half expecting another sound. Around 11, I crawled into the sleeping bag again. The tapping started up, faint and rhythmic, like fingers on glass. I pulled the bag tighter around me. Pipes, I thought. Just pipes. Then as I drifted off, I swore I heard something else. A low, whispering hum, too soft to make out. It seemed to come from the walls themselves. I told myself it was exhaustion, the stress of moving. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. The first week in the house passed in a blur. I started my job at the hardware store, and it was a decent distraction. Stocking shelves, helping customers find screws or paint. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me busy, and I liked the ache in my muscles at the end of the day. Routine was what I needed. Something steady to anchor me after everything with Jen fell apart. The house, though, it didn't feel steady. I'd come home each night, drop my keys on the counter, and listen. The creaks were constant, sharp little snaps from the floorboards or walls. Sometimes I'd catch a whiff of that musty smell again, sharp and sour, like wet dirt after rain. I'd open a window, but it'd linger anyway. Old houses, I kept telling myself. They've got character. By Friday, I'd gotten the bed frame together and dragged a mattress up in the truck. No more sleeping bag. I crashed hard that night. The kind of sleep where you don't dream, just sink. But around 3 a.m., I jolted awake, heart hammering. The room was freezing, my breath puffing out in little clouds. I sat up, rubbing my arms, and listened. Heavy footsteps paced above me, slow, deliberate, like someone walking the attic. I held my breath, counting the steps. 1, 2, 3. They stopped right over my head. Silence pressed in, thick and heavy. I waited, expecting another sound, but nothing came. The cold faded, the air warming back up. I lay down, staring at the ceiling. Raccoons, I muttered, or squirrels. Something up there. It made sense. Old houses always had critters. I'd check the attic tomorrow. Morning came gray and damp. I grabbed a coffee and headed upstairs, flashlight in hand. The attic door was in the hall, a pull-down ladder with a rusty hinge. I yanked it open, and a puff of dusty air hit me, stale and thick. The ladder creaked as I climbed, each step wobbling under my weight. Up top, it was a mess, beams and insulation, a few old boxes shoved in a corner. No raccoons, no nests, just cobwebs and shadows. The floorboards looked solid, no holes or scratches. I swept the flashlight around, but it was empty. Weird, but not impossible. Maybe the sounds carried funny in this place. Back downstairs, I bumped into Mrs. Carter again. She was raking leaves in her yard, her bony hands gripping the handle tight. "Settling in all right?" she asked, not looking up. "Yeah, mostly," I said, leaning on the fence. "Heard some noises last night, though. Footsteps in the attic." Her rake paused mid-swipe. She glanced at me, eyes sharp. "Footsteps, you say?" "Probably just animals. Checked this morning, nothing up there." She snorted a dry little sound. Folks before you said the same. Thought it was rats or wind. Then they started hearing whispers, seeing things move. Left in a hurry after that. She went back to raking, like she hadn't just dropped a bomb. I forced a laugh. "Whispers. Huh? Good thing I'm not superstitious." She didn't reply, just kept scraping at the leaves. I walked back inside, her words gnawing at me. Whispers. Shadows. I shook it off. Small towns love rumors. The house was old, that's all. Old and loud. That night, I cooked chicken in the oven, the smell filling the kitchen. I was halfway through dinner when the lights flickered. Just once. Quick and sharp. I looked up, fork in hand. The bulb buzzed, then steadied. Power surge, maybe, but then I heard it, a low scrape, like something dragging across the floor upstairs. My stomach tightened. I set the fork down and grabbed the flashlight again. Upstairs, the hall was dark, the air cooler than it should have been. I checked the bedroom. Nothing. The bathroom. Empty. The spare room. Just boxes I hadn't unpacked. The sound didn't come again, but the cold stuck around, seeping into my fingers. I went back down, telling myself it was a house settling. Old with shifts, right? Later, in bed, I couldn't sleep. The tapping started up again, faint and steady, like nails on a window. I pulled the blanket up, ignoring it. Pipes, just pipes. But then came the hum, low and soft, vibrating through the walls. It wasn't words, not exactly, but it felt alive, like something breathing in the dark. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing away. Eventually it faded, and I drifted off, exhaustion winning out. When I woke up, the room was normal, warm, quiet, sunlight streaming in. I almost laughed at myself. A noisy house and a tired mind. That's all it was. Still, as I got ready for work, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching me sleep. Work was a grind that week. The store was busy. Spring rush, people fixing up yards and decks. I hauled bags of mulch and cut lumber until my shoulders burned, but I didn't mind. It kept my head clear. The house, though, was starting to wear on me. Every night, I'd come home to those creaks and taps, like the place was talking to itself. I'd turn on the TV loud to drown it out, but it never quite worked. Tuesday night, I noticed the cold spots. I was in the living room, eating takeout pizza, and scrolling my phone when a chill hit me, like someone opened a freezer door. My arms prickled, and I rubbed them, glancing around. The windows were shut, no draft. I got up and paced, trying to find the source. The air near the staircase felt icy, sharp enough to make my teeth ache. I stood there, breath fogging, and then it was gone, warmth creeping back like nothing happened. Weird, I muttered, shaking it off. Old houses have draft, right? Bad insulation or something. I finished my pizza and went to bed, but the cold stuck in my mind. It didn't feel random. It felt like it moved. Wednesday, it happened again. I was brushing my teeth, the bathroom mirror fogging up in the sink, when the chill swept in. My reflection stared back, pale and tired, and for a second, I swore the glass flickered, like something shifted behind me. I spun around, heart thudding. Nothing but the chipped tile and my towel on the rack. The cold lingered, though, wrapping around my legs like damp hands. I hurried out, flipping the light off, and told myself it was the pipes messing with the temperature. Thursday night was worse. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, TV blaring some late-night infomercial, when a thud jolted me awake. Heavy, deliberate, right above me, attic again. I sat up, groggy, and listened. Footsteps paced, slow and uneven, dragging something soft behind them. My mouth went dry. I grabbed the flashlight, hands shaky, and climbed the stairs. The air got colder with every step, thick and heavy, like walking through fog. At the attic door, I hesitated. The footsteps stopped, but the silence felt worse, like something was waiting. I pulled the ladder down, the hinges screaming, and climbed. The beam of light cut through the dark, hitting the same old boxes and beams. Nothing moved, no tracks, no critters, but the air up there was freezing, stinging my face. I backed down fast, slamming the door shut. Screw this, I said out loud just to hear my voice. It had to be the house settling. Had to be. Friday, I saw Mrs. Carter again. She was watering her flowers, humming some tuneless song. I waved, trying to act normal. Hey, you ever get cold spots in your place? I asked casual as I could. She turned off the hose, squinting at me. Cold spots? Not here. That house, though, folks said it'd go icy sometimes, even in summer. One tenant swore she saw her breath indoors. Said it felt like someone was there, watching. She shrugged. Drafts, probably. Yeah, probably. I echoed, but my gut twisted. I didn't tell her about the footsteps. Didn't want her thinking I was losing it. That night, I stayed up late, too wired to sleep. Around midnight, the tapping started, sharp, insistent, like someone rapping on the walls. I ignored it, cranking the TV louder. Then the hum came, low and buzzing, weaving through the static. I muted the sound, straining to hear. It wasn't random noise. It rose and fell, almost like a voice too muffled to catch. My skin crawled. I stood, flashlight in hand, and checked every room. Nothing, just the house, creaking and cold. In bed, I couldn't shake it. The footsteps came again, pacing the attic, and this time, something scraped like nails on wood. I pulled the blanket over my head, heart pounding, telling myself it was nothing, but the cold slipped under the covers, brushing my neck, and the hum grew louder, whispering things I couldn't understand. I didn't sleep until dawn, when the sounds finally stopped. Saturday morning, I sat at the kitchen table, coffee shaking in my hands. The house was quiet now, sunlight streaming in, but I felt it, something lingering just out of sight. I wasn't imagining it. Not all of it. I needed answers. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Saturday morning, I sat there with my coffee, staring at the ceiling where the footsteps had been. The house was quiet now, sun lighting up the dusty corners, but it didn't feel safe. It felt like it was waiting. I'd heard too much, felt too much. Cold spots, thuds, that damn hum. It wasn't just an old house anymore. I needed to know what I was dealing with. After breakfast, I threw on a jacket and headed next door. Mrs. Carter was on her porch, knitting something gray and lumpy. She looked up as I climbed her steps, her needles pausing. "You're pale, Matt," she said matter-of-fact. "Rough night?" I rubbed my neck, forcing a smile. "Yeah, something like that. Can I ask you about the house? You've lived here a while, right?" She set the knitting down, folding her hands. 30 years. Seen plenty come and go from that place. What do you want to know? The stuff you mentioned. Footsteps, whispers. Was there more? Who lived there before all these tenants? She leaned back, eyes narrowing. Before the renters, it was Old Man Hargrove. Owned it back in the 60s. Strange fella. Kept to himself, didn't talk much. Folks said he was into weird things, books and rituals. Occult nonsense. Died in there, alone. Heart attack, they figured, but no one found him for weeks. House sat empty after that till the landlord started renting it out. Rituals? I asked, my throat tightening. Like what? She shrugged. Dunno. Rumors, mostly. People saw lights flickering at night. Heard chanting sometimes. One kid swore he peeked in a window and saw Hargrove drawing symbols on the floor. Probably hogwash, but folks love a story. She picked up her knitting again. Why? You hearing more than footsteps? I hesitated. Just noises. Cold spots. Trying to figure it out. She nodded like she'd expected that. Check the library if you're curious. They got old papers, records. Might find something on Hargrove. Then she went back to her needles. Conversation over. I walked away, her words buzzing in my head. Occult stuff? It sounded crazy, but it fit too well. That afternoon, I drove to the town library, a squat brick building downtown. The librarian, a guy with thick glasses, pointed me to the microfiche machine and a stack of old newspapers. I spent hours scrolling through grainy articles, looking for Hargrove. I found him in a 1968 obituary. Elias Hargrove, 57, found deceased in his home. Reclusive resident, no family. Cause of death presumed natural. Not much, but a few earlier mentions caught my eye. Complained from neighbors about odd noises and strange visitors at his place. One article quoted a woman saying she'd seen him burning papers in his yard, muttering to himself. Nothing solid, but it painted a picture. Weird guy, weird house. Back home, I couldn't sit still. The library trip had me jumpy, like I'd poked something I shouldn't have. I cooked dinner, mac and cheese, comfort food, but every creak made me flinch. Around 9, the lights flickered again, longer this time. I froze, spoon halfway in my mouth. The air turned cold, sharp and sudden, and then I heard it, a slow, heavy thump from upstairs. I set the spoon down, grabbing the flashlight. My legs felt like lead as I climbed the stairs. The hall was dark, the cold biting at my fingers. Another thump, louder, from the spare room. I pushed the door open, light shaking in my hand. Boxes sat untouched, but the window was cracked open, letting in a thin breeze. I hadn't left it like that. I shut it hard, locking it, and turned to leave, then stopped. Something scratched, faint and quick, inside the wall. I pressed my ear to it, holding my breath. Scratch, scratch, pause, like nails clawing wood. My heart slammed against my ribs. I backed out, shutting the door, and hurried downstairs. Mice, I said out loud, voice shaky. Just mice. But that night, sleep wouldn't come. The footsteps started again, pacing the attic, dragging that soft sound behind them. The hum grew louder, threading through the walls, and the cold swept over me in waves. I lay there, eyes wide, blanket pulled tight. Then just before dawn, I heard a whisper, clear and close, right by my ear. "Stay," it said, soft as a breath. I bolted upright, swinging the flashlight around. Nothing, just my room, empty and dark. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I wasn't imagining it. Something was here. I didn't go to work Sunday. Called in sick, said I had a bug. Truth was, I couldn't face the day after that whisper. "Stay," it had said, right in my ear, like someone was leaning over me. I barely slept, jumping at every creak, waiting for it to happen again. By morning, I was a wreck. Coffee couldn't steady my hands, and my reflection in the bathroom mirror looked hollow, eyes sunken like I'd aged a decade. I had to know more about Hargrove. Mrs. Carter's story and those old papers weren't enough. If he'd done something to this house, rituals, whatever, I needed proof. I tore through the place, checking every corner I hadn't unpacked. The living room was just boxes and dust. The kitchen bare, except for my stuff. Upstairs, the bedroom and bathroom were the same. But the spare room, those unpacked boxes, fell off. The air in there was always colder, heavier, like it didn't want me poking around. I started with the closet. It was small, cramped, with peeling wallpaper and a single shelf. Nothing but cobwebs at first. Then I saw it. A loose floorboard, one corner lifted just enough to notice. I grabbed a screwdriver from downstairs and pried it up, though it splintered, revealing a shallow space underneath. My flashlight caught something, a leather-bound book, edges frayed, covered in dust. My stomach flipped as I pulled it out. It was a journal, handwriting scrawled across yellowed pages. The first entry was dated June 12, 1965. Elias Hargrove was written inside the cover in shaky ink. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and started reading. His early notes were mundane, whether groceries, fixing a leak. But a few pages in, it shifted. "The voices come at night now," he wrote, soft from the walls. "They know my name." My skin prickled. I kept going. He'd found something in the basement, he said. A carving, old and worn, hidden behind a loose brick. "A door," he called it. Not of wood or stone, but He started experimenting. Candles, chalk symbols, words he didn't explain. "It listens," one entry read. "It wants more." By 1967, he was frantic, pages smeared with ink. I opened it. I shouldn't have. "It's here, always here." The last entry, undated, was just one line. I can't close it. I shut the journal, heart pounding. This was crazy. Occult garbage, like Mrs. Carter said. But the footsteps, the whispers, it matched. I shoved the book in a drawer downstairs, telling myself I'd figure it out later. I needed air, normalcy. I cooked lunch, blasted music, tried to shake it off. But the house felt different now, like it knew I'd read those words. That night, it got worse. I was in bed, lights off, when the footsteps started, louder, faster, stomping across the attic. The dragging sound came with them, heavy and wet, like a soaked rag. I gripped the blanket, willing it to stop. Then the cold hit, sharp and deep, freezing my toes on the covers. The hum swelled, buzzing in my skull, and the whispers came, dozens of them, overlapping, hissing from the walls. Stay, 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 they chanted, soft and insistent. I bolted up, flashlight swinging. The room was empty, but the air shimmered like heat off pavement. Something moved in the corner, a shadow, tall and thin, gone when I blinked. My breath caught, chest tight. I stumbled out of bed, down the hall, checking every room. Nothing, just cold and dark and that damn hum. Back in bed, I didn't sleep. The footsteps circled above me, the whispers weaving through the night. At one point, the mattress dipped like someone sat on the edge. I froze, eyes locked on the ceiling, feeling the weight shift. It lasted maybe 10 seconds, then lifted. I didn't move until sunlight crept through the blinds. Monday morning, I found scratches on the bedroom wall. 3 thin lines, fresh and jagged, right where the shadow had been. I hadn't heard a thing make them. I stood there, staring, the journal's words echoing in my head. It's here, Hargrove wrote. Whatever he'd let in, it wasn't gone. I didn't go to work Monday either. 2 days in a row calling in sick wasn't smart, but I couldn't face people. Not with those scratches on my wall and Hargrove's journal burning a hole in my mind. I stood there in the bedroom, coffee cold in my hand, staring at the marks. 3 lines, deep enough to splinter the wood. Too high for me to reach without a chair. No way I'd done it in my sleep. No way a mouse could have either. I grabbed the journal from the drawer and flipped through it again, hands shaky. Hargrove's words were wilder the deeper I went. Talk of shapes in the dark and cold that clings. He'd stopped sleeping, said the thing he let in wouldn't let him rest. It sits, he wrote once, heavy as stone, watching. My stomach churned. The mattress dipping last night. Had that been real? I needed to check the basement. He'd found that carving down there, whatever it was. Maybe it was still there, some clue to what was happening. I grabbed the flashlight and headed to the door by the kitchen. It stuck when I turned the knob, like it didn't want to open. I yanked harder, and it gave with a groan. Stairs stretched down, narrow and steep, the air thick with that musty smell. Stronger now, like rot. The basement was a concrete box, damp and cluttered. Old paint cans, a rusty bike, junk from past tenants. I swept the light around, looking for loose bricks. One wall was rougher, older, with cracks spidering out. I ran my fingers over it, feeling for anything odd. Near the bottom, a brick wobbled. I pried it out with a screwdriver, heart thudding. Behind it was a shallow hole, and carved into the stone, a symbol, a circle with jagged lines cutting through, like a broken star. It looked old, worn smooth in spots, but made my skin crawl. I stared at it, Hargrove's words echoing. A door of will. Had he meant this? I reached out, stupidly, and touched it. The cold hit fast, sharp, electric, shooting up my arm. I jerked back, dropping the flashlight. It clattered, beams spinning, and for a second, I swore I saw something. A shadow hunched and still in the corner. The light steadied. Nothing there, just boxes and dust. I bolted upstairs, slamming the door. My arm still tingled, like I'd brushed a live wire. I paced the kitchen, telling myself it was nothing. Old house, old tricks, but the journal, the carving, the scratches, it was piling up. I couldn't ignore it anymore. That night, I tried to stay awake. Sat on the couch, TV on, lights blazing. Around 1 a.m., the power flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed the room, thick and silent. The flashlight was upstairs. I'd left it after the basement. I fumbled for my phone, hands clumsy, when the footsteps started. Heavy, deliberate, coming down the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. My breath hitched. I pressed against the couch. Phone light trembling. The steps stopped at the bottom, maybe 10 feet away. Silence stretched, then a low scrape, like something dragging across the floor. The air turned icy, my teeth chattering. I swung the light toward the stairs. Nothing, just shadows in that damn cold. Then the couch shifted. Not much, just a dip like someone sat beside me. I froze, phone slipping in my grip. The weight pressed harder, slow and heavy, pinning my leg. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. A whisper hissed, close and wet, stay. The hum swelled, vibrating in my chest, and the weight lifted, sudden as it came. I scrambled up, lunging for the stairs, tripping over boxes. I grabbed a flashlight from my room and locked the door, heart slamming. The house went quiet again, but I didn't trust it. I sat against the wall, light on, waiting for dawn. The scratches on the wall seemed longer now, deeper, like they'd grown while I was gone. When the sun rose, I didn't feel safe. The house wasn't just old. It was alive. I couldn't stay still Tuesday. The house felt like a trap, every creak a warning, every shadow a threat. I'd felt that weight on the couch, heard the whisper, clear as day, not my imagination. Hargrove's journal wasn't some old man's ravings anymore. It was a map to whatever was stalking me, and I had to figure it out before it got worse. I grabbed the journal and headed back to the library. The librarian barely glanced up as I settled at the microfiche again, flipping through old records. I needed more on Hargrove, something beyond the obituary and rumors. After an hour, I found it, a small article from 1967, buried in the local section. Resident questioned after disturbance. Elias Hargrove, cited for erratic behavior, after neighbors reported shouting and strange lights from his house. Police found nothing illegal, just books and odd drawings. They let him go, but the piece mentioned a detail that stopped me cold. He claimed something was speaking to him through the walls. I scribbled it down, hands shaking. It matched the journal, voices, rituals, that carving in the basement. I dug deeper, cross-referencing dates. A week before his death, a neighbor filed a noise complaint, chanting at 3 a.m. No follow-up, just a note that Hargrove didn't answer the door. I leaned back, piecing it together. He'd opened something, lost control, and it killed him. Now it was here, with me. Back home, I avoided the basement. The symbol down there felt alive now, pulsing in my memory. I sat at the kitchen table, journal open, reading entries I'd skipped. One from 1966 stuck out. It needs a host. I gave it blood, mine at first. Now it wants more. The attic hums with it. Blood? Rituals? My head spun. I flipped to a later page, smeared with ink. I see it sometimes, tall and bent, in the glass. It waits. My stomach dropped. The shadow I'd seen, was that it? I couldn't sit there. I grabbed the flashlight and climbed to the attic, needing answers. The ladder creaked, dust choking me as I poked my head up. The boxes were still there, untouched, but the air felt wrong, thick, pressing on my chest. I swept the light around, and something glinted, a small mirror cracked and leaning against a beam. I hadn't noticed it before. I stepped closer, boots thudding on the boards. My reflection stared back, pale and warped, but then it flickered. Something tall loomed behind me, crooked and dark. I spun, light slashing the shadows. Nothing, just the attic, silent and still. My pulse roared in my ears. I grabbed the mirror, hands trembling, and hauled it downstairs. In the kitchen, I set it on the table, staring at it. The glass was old, streaked with age, but I swore I saw it ripple again, brief, like a shadow passing through. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in the living room, lights on, mirror propped nearby. Around 2 a.m., the footsteps started, stomping, erratic, circling the attic. The hum kicked in, loud and jagged, rattling the walls. I gripped the flashlight, watching the mirror. The glass shivered, and there it was, tall, bent, faceless, standing behind my reflection. I blinked and it vanished. Then the floor shook. A thud hit the ceiling, dust sifting down. Another, closer, like it was coming down the stairs. The cold swept in, biting my face, and the whispers erupted. Stay, 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 sharp and overlapping. I backed against the wall, flashlight slipping. The air thickened, and the mirror tipped, crashing to the floor. Glass shards scattered, and in one piece, I saw it again, closer, leaning over me. I ran upstairs, locked the bedroom door, and shoved the dresser against it. The footsteps followed, slow and heavy, stopping outside. Something scratched, long, deliberate, down the wood. I held my breath, waiting. It stopped, but the cold stayed, seeping through cracks. I didn't move until morning. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but the scratches were there, deep, claw-like, running top to bottom. The house wasn't hiding anymore. Wednesday morning, I stood in the hallway, staring at those scratches on the door, deep, ragged, like something big had clawed its way down. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The mirror, the shadow, the whispers, it wasn't just noises anymore. Whatever Hargrove had let in was real, and it was after me. I couldn't stay here, but I couldn't leave either, not without trying to stop it. I grabbed the journal and reread every page, looking for a way out. Hargrove mentioned blood, rituals, a door will. He'd opened it, fed it, but never said how to close it. One entry stuck out. Salt holds it back, but not for long. It hates the light. Salt and light, old superstition stuff. I didn't care if it sounded dumb. I needed something. I drove to the hardware store, didn't clock in, just bought a bag of rock salt and a pack of bulbs. My boss saw me, raised an eyebrow, but I mumbled about a home project and bolted. Back at the house, I poured salt along the windowsills and door frames, a thick line across every entrance. Felt stupid doing it, like a kid playing ghost hunter, but the scratches kept me moving. I swapped every bulb for the brightest ones. 100 watts, glaring white. The house blazed like a stadium by dusk. I sat in the living room, lights on, journal in my lap. The salt crunched under my boots, a gritty reminder of how crazy this was. I waited, tense, listening. Around 11, the footsteps started, slow, thudding from the attic. The hum followed, low and buzzing, but it sounded muffled, like it was pushing against something. The salt, maybe? I gripped the flashlight, hoping. Then the lights flickered. Just a blink, but my stomach dropped. They steadied, then dimmed, slowly, like someone turning a dial. The hum sharpened, cutting through the air, and the cold hit hard and fast. I jumped up, checking the salt lines. They were intact, but the air shimmered over them, rippling like heat. The footsteps moved, down the stairs now, heavy and wet. I backed into the kitchen, flashlight shaking. The bulbs buzzed, flickering again, and shadows stretched across the walls, long, twisted shapes that didn't match anything in the room. The whispers came, "Stay, stay, stay," hissing from every corner. I swung the light, catching a glimpse in the broken mirror shards on the floor. That tall, bent thing, closer now, its edges blurry but solid. The floor creaked behind me. I turned, and the air thickened, pressing on my chest. Something brushed my arm, cold, damp, like a hand without fingers. I yelped, stumbling back, and the lights went out. Total black. Just the hum and the whispers, loud and frantic. I clicked the flashlight on, beams slicing the dark. The salt line by the door was smudged, scattered, like something had dragged through it. Footsteps thudded closer, right in the room now. I swung the light, and there it was, tall, crooked, faceless, standing by the stairs. Not a shadow anymore, but real, dark and slick, like wet tar. It didn't move, just watched, the air around it freezing. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. The whispers roared, "Stay," and it stepped forward, slow and heavy. I threw the salt bag at it, crystals bursting across the floor. It flinched, the hum faltering, and the light snapped back on, blinding. When my eyes adjusted, it was gone. Just salt and silence, the cold fading fast. I sank to the floor, panting, flashlight rolling away. The house was still, but I knew it wasn't over. I checked the mirror shards. My reflection stared back, alone, but the glass trembled, like something was still there waiting. The salt had worked, barely. I wasn't safe, not even close. I didn't sleep after that. Couldn't. The thing in the house, whatever it was, had stood there, real and solid, staring at me. The salt had pushed it back, but not far. I could feel it, lurking just out of sight, waiting for me to slip. Wednesday night bled into Thursday, and I stayed in the living room, lights blazing, salt scattered everywhere. My eyes burned, my head throbbed, but closing them wasn't an option. I kept the journal close, flipping through it like a lifeline. Hargrove's last pages were a mess. Ink blotches, scratched out words. It learns, he wrote. It changes. Light won't hold it forever. My stomach sank. The salt, the bulbs. They'd worked once, but what if it figured them out? I'd seen it adapt already, smudging the salt line, dimming the lights. It wasn't dumb. It was patient. Morning came, gray and heavy. I called work again, third day sick. My voice cracked on the phone, and my boss didn't push. I sounded like hell because I felt it. I made coffee, hands clumsy, spilling grounds on the counter. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was holding its breath. I swept the salt back into lines, double-checked the bulbs. Busy work to keep my mind from unraveling. Around noon, I heard a soft tap like a knuckle on glass. I froze, cup halfway in my mouth. It came again from the kitchen window. I crept over, peering out. Nothing but the backyard, overgrown and still. The glass was cold under my fingers, fogging with my breath. Then the tap turned to a scratch, slow, deliberate, inside the pane. I jerked back, coffee splashing. The sound stopped, but the window shivered, like something pressed against it. I couldn't stay there. I grabbed a journal and flashlight, retreating upstairs. The bedroom felt safer, smaller, with the door locked. I sat on the bed, trying to breathe. The scratches on the door stared back at me, longer now. I was sure of it. They'd grown, creeping down the wood like veins. I traced one with my finger, and the wall hummed, faint and alive. I yanked my hand away. That night, it came back hard. The footsteps started at midnight, stomping across the attic, shaking dust from the ceiling. The hum roared, loud enough to rattle my teeth, and the lights flickered, fast like a strobe. I clutched the flashlight, salt bag in my lap. The cold swept in, sharp and wet, pooling around my feet. The whispers hissed, "Stay, stay, stay." Closer now, circling the room. I sprinkled salt around the bed, a shaky circle. The lights died, plunging me into black. The flashlight clicked on, beam trembling. The footsteps moved down the stairs into the hall. Thump, thump, thump. They stopped outside the door. Something scratched, long, slow drags down the wood. I held my breath, watching the knob. It rattled once, then stopped. The mattress dipped, heavy, sudden right beside me. I swung the light. Nothing there, just a dent in the blanket, deep and real. The weight shifted, pressing on my legs, cold soaking through. The whispers turned to a growl, "Stay," low and thick, vibrating in my chest. I threw salt at it, handfuls flying, and the weight lifted, the growl cutting off. The light snapped back, dim but steady. I didn't move. Couldn't. The salt circle was smudged, half gone. The door had new scratches, deeper, crossing the old ones. My flashlight flickered, dying for a second before flaring back. I sat there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the next move. It wasn't gone. It was toying with me. By dawn, I was numb. The house went quiet, but the air felt wrong. Thick, watching. I wasn't winning. I was surviving, barely. Thursday dragged into Friday, and I was a ghost of myself. No sleep, no peace, just salt and lights, and that thing waiting me out. My hands shook constantly now, coffee barely keeping me upright. The house wasn't hiding it anymore. Scratches spread across the bedroom walls, jagged lines creeping like cracks. The air stayed cold, even with the heat cranked. I hadn't showered in days. Couldn't risk the bathroom, not after the mirror flickered again, showing that tall, bent shape behind me. I'd stopped calling work. Didn't care. The journal was all I had left, but it offered nothing, no way to close Hargrove's door. I sat on the bed, salt ring crumbling around me, reading his last words over and over. "It's here, always here." I'd felt it, the weight, the whispers. It wanted me to stay, but why? To feed it like he had? To break me? Friday night, I snapped. The footsteps started early, pounding the attic, shaking the walls. The hum screamed, a jagged wail that made my ears ache. Lights flickered, bulbs popping one by one downstairs. I grabbed a flashlight and salt, yelling into the dark, "What do you want? Leave me alone." My voice cracked, raw and desperate. The house answered, thuds racing down the stairs, fast and heavy. I locked the bedroom door, shoving the dresser back against it. The cold hit, sharp as knives, frosting the windows. The whispers roared, "Stay, stay, stay." A dozen voices, wet and close. The doorknob rattled, hard, then stopped. Silence. I held the flashlight, beam steady on the door. Then the floor creaked. Inside the room, I swung the light. It was there, tall, crooked, standing by the bed. Not a shadow now, real, dark and glistening, like oil spilling upright. No face, just a void where one should have been, tilting toward me. The air stank of rot, thick and sour, clogging my throat. My legs locked, breath shallow. It stepped closer, boots sinking into the floorboards, leaving wet smears. The mattress groaned as it sat, slow, deliberate, inches from me. The cold burned, my fingers numb. I felt it lean in, the weight crushing the bed, and a whisper rasped right in my ear. Stay? Not words, but sound, deep and grinding, like stones dragging underwater. My chest tightened, panic clawing up. I swung the flashlight, beam hitting it square. It flinched, the hum stuttering, but didn't move. I grabbed the salt, hurling it. Crystal stuck to its slick form, sizzling faintly, and it lurched back, a low growl shaking the room. The lights flared, blinding, and it was gone, vanished, leaving a damp stain on the blanket. I scrambled off the bed, tripping over salt, flashlight rolling. The door rattled again, harder, with splintering. I yanked it open, dresser crashing aside, and ran down the stairs, through the living room, out the front door. The night air hit me, crisp and clean, but the hum followed, faint and trailing. I stumbled to the truck, keys jangling, and peeled out, tires squealing. I didn't stop till I hit town, parking under a streetlight, panting like I'd run the whole way. The truck smelled normal, no rot, no cold. I sat there, shaking, watching the road back to the house. Nothing moved, but as my breathing slowed, I heard it, a tap, soft and steady on the window beside me. I didn't look, couldn't. The hum buzzed, distant but there, threading through the glass. It wasn't done with me. I didn't go back to the house that night. Sat in the truck under that streetlight till dawn, windows up, doors locked. The tapping on the glass stopped after a while, but the hum stuck with me, soft, buzzing in my skull like a bad headache. Every shadow outside made me jump, expecting that tall, slick thing to lurch into view. It didn't, but I felt, watching, waiting like it knew I couldn't run far. Morning came slow, gray light creeping over the town. My phone was dead, left behind in the bedroom with the journal and salt. I drove to a diner, hands still shaky on the wheel. The place was half empty. Just a few truckers and a waitress who didn't ask questions. I ordered coffee and a burger, staring at the table while it came. The food helped, grounding me, but my head wouldn't clear. That smell, rot and damp, clung to my clothes, my skin. I kept replaying it. The thing on the bed, its weight, that grinding whisper. Stay. It wasn't letting go. Hargrove had fed it, opened something, and now it had me in its sights. I couldn't go back, but I couldn't stay here either, jumping at every noise. I needed a plan. Maybe burn the house down, salt the ashes, something to end it. But that carving in the basement, that door, what if it wasn't tied to the house? What if it followed me? Mrs. Carter's face popped into my head. She'd known about Hargrove, the rumors. Maybe she knew more, something useful. After eating, I drove to her place, parking across from the house. It loomed there, dark and quiet, windows like empty eyes. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself out of the truck and up her steps. She answered on the third knock, peering through the screen. "You look like death," she said. No hello. "What happened?" I swallowed, throat dry. Something's in there. I saw it, tall, dark, real. It's been talking to me. I ran last night. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't laugh. "Hargrove's mess, huh?" I told you, folks don't stay long. She opened the door, nodding me in. Her living room was warm, cluttered with knitting and old photos. It felt safe, normal. I sank into a chair, spilling it all. Footsteps, whispers, a journal, the thing on the bed. She listened, sipping tea, face unreadable. When I finished, she sighed. Sounds like you got its attention. Hargrove messed with things he shouldn't have. Open a crack, let something through. Salt and light might slow it, but it's stubborn, clings to what it wants. How do I stop it? I asked, voice cracking. She shrugged. To know if you can. Burn the place, maybe, or leave and hope it forgets you. But it's got a taste now, might not let go easy. I left her place hollowed out. Burn it? Move? Neither felt right. I drove to a motel on the edge of town, paid cash for a room. The clerk didn't care about my stained shirt or wild eyes. I locked the door, drew the curtains, and sat on the stiff bed, staring at nothing. The hum was gone, the cold too, but I didn't trust it. That night, I slept fitful, shallow. No footsteps, no whispers. But around 3 a.m., I woke to a creak. The room was dark, air still. Then a tap, soft on the window. My heart lurched. I fumbled for the lamp, light flooding the space. Nothing outside, just a parking lot, empty and quiet. I checked the lock, the curtains, safe for now. But as I lay back, the tap came again, faint, insistent. And under it, a hum, low and familiar, seeping through the walls. The motel room didn't feel safe anymore. That tap on the window, the hum threading through the walls, it followed me. Saturday morning, I sat on the bed, staring at the curtains, afraid to pull them back. The light outside was dull, filtered through heavy clouds, but it was better than the dark. I hadn't slept after that sound, just waited, listening, expecting the footsteps to start again. I checked out at noon, tossing cash on counter. The clerk barely looked up. My truck rumbled to life, and I drove, nowhere at first, just circling town, trying to think. The house was poisoned, but Mrs. Carter's words stuck with me. It's got a taste now. Had I made it worse by running? Fed it fear instead of blood? I didn't know, but I couldn't keep dodging it. I needed to end this. I stopped at a gas station, bought matches and a can of lighter fluid. Burning the house felt insane, but it was all I had. I drove back, parking a block away. The place looked dead, windows dark, paint peeling, like it had been waiting for me. My hands shook as I grabbed the supplies and walked up the porch. The door creaked open, unlocked, like it knew I'd come back. Inside, the air was thick, cold seeping into my bones. The salt lines were gone, swept away, and the scratches on walls had spread, twisting patterns, almost words. I poured lighter fluid in the living room, splashing it over the couch, the floor. The smell burned my nose, sharp and real. I struck a match, the flame small but steady, and dropped it. Fire caught fast, licking up the fabric, spreading to the walls. I ran out, smoke billowing behind me. Flames climbed the windows as I hit the truck, peeling away. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called it in. I didn't stop, didn't look back, just drove till I hit the highway, putting miles between me and that place. The rear view stayed clear, no shadows, no shapes. Maybe it worked. Maybe it was trapped, burning with the house. I found another motel farther out and crashed there. No hum, no taps, just silence, heavy and strange. I slept hard, dreamless, for the first time in days. Sunday morning, I woke to sunlight, warm on my face. My clothes still stank of smoke and rot, but the room felt normal. I showered, ate, tried to believe it was over. But that night, it crept back. I was brushing my teeth, steam fog in the mirror when the air chilled. My breath puffed out, faint and white. I froze, staring at the glass. My reflection stared back, alone, then flickered. Something tall, bent, loomed behind me, dark and slick. Just for a second, I spun, toothbrush clattering. Nothing there. The room was empty, warm again. I packed my bag, checked out, kept moving. Different towns, different motels. Didn't matter. The hum found me. soft and distant, tapping at windows, buzzing in walls. Sometimes I catch a shadow, quick, in a corner, gone when I looked. The cold would brush me, light and fleeting, like a reminder. Weeks later, I heard the house was gone, burned to the foundation. No one mentioned Hargrove or carvings, just a freak fire. I wanted to believe it died there, but I don't. It's out here, patient, waiting. I keep driving, lights on, salt in my pockets. Every creak, every whisper, I hear it. Stay. Soft as a breath, close as my shadow. And somewhere that empty lot waits for the next tenant.